Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. As you guys can probably tell by the title, this video is going to be about choices. This is a video that I've been thinking about for a while, but I wasn't really sure exactly how I wanted to kind of conceptualize it until I saw a really interesting conversation on Twitter that was talking about empathy. So I'm going to read you guys some tweets. Basically, people were having a conversation about a Washington Post. Now my tweets don't want to load. People were having a really interesting conversation about a Washington Post article that ran that said that we need to have more empathy for Trump supporters. Now, I have a couple of things I want to say about this. Number one, it's not a bad article. Like, I'll include a link to it in the description box for anyone that wants to read it. It's not a bad article. Basically, what the article does is it talks about how, the vast majority of Trump's, supporters are poor, lower middle class, lower class, white people that are struggling. They're struggling and are trying to kind of make sense of that struggle, and that we need to have more empathy for them. Now, the premise of this article is really funny to me because these are the same people that for so long, right, all they wanted to talk about was like personal responsibility, right? And like personal responsibility. Like, when are the blacks going to take personal responsibility for their neighborhoods? And like, when are the blacks going to take personal responsibility for their schools? And when are the blacks going to take personal responsibility for their, failings in life? And like really like champion this idea of like personal responsibility, which is kind of born out of this, really toxic idea of the American dream, which I read this really, really great article the other day, which I will also include in the description box, which is basically talking about how the American dream is built on this idea that people that work hard get ahead and people that don't work hard don't get ahead. And that while this sounds nice in theory and that it works in, a land where there are unlimited opportunities, this does not work in reality. Sometimes good things happen to bad people. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. Sometimes you can work really hard and just not get ahead because there are not unlimited resources. All these other factors come into play, and the idea of the American dream doesn't really take any of these factors into account. They just say, work hard and you'll get ahead, right? And that places the personal responsibility solely, again, on the person, that like you have to work hard. And if you're working hard and you're not getting ahead, it's something you're doing wrong. It's impossible that it could be the economy. It's impossible that it could be the school systems. It's impossible that it could be redlining, so you can't buy a good house in a good neighborhood. It's impossible that it could be systemic or institutionalized racism that has, been discriminating against you since you were born. It's impossible that it could be the racist war on drugs. All these things are impossible because we live in America, and the American dream is that everyone gets what they deserve, right? So if niggas are at the bottom, it's because we deserve to be at the bottom. Great read. It's a really great read. I might read it again and maybe make a video just like talking about it a little more. But like I said, there will be a link in the description box for anyone that wants to check that out. But it's just really interesting to see people that have for so long championed this idea of personal responsibility when it comes to marginalized groups. Now, all of a sudden, they want to talk about outside forces and outside influences and how Trump supporters really aren't that bad, and we need to have more empathy for them because they're just victims of their situations, right? Like, they don't really need to take any personal responsibility for the horrible racist things that they say and do, right? Because they're the real victims, and we need to have more empathy for them. Really, really interesting. Just like I talked about in my video. My tweets are really not loading. Wow. Just like I talked about in my video on drug addiction, how, when it's people of color, black people, minorities, it's the war on drugs, mass incarceration, school to prison pipeline, and super predators, and give them the maximum amount of time that they can get for, these minor non-violent drug offenses. But now that you have fucking white people overdosing on fucking heroin and OxyContin out in fucking Appalachia like Winter's Bone and fucking killing each other and ODing on that shit and living in these crime-ridden poverty, now all of a sudden it's, we have to go gentle on them. We have to ease them into rehabs. And no, these are not criminals. This is not a criminal thing. Like, they're just poor, and what else do you expect them to do? All of a sudden, again, it's no longer personal responsibility. White people are never asked to take personal responsibility. That's just something for people that actually have truly been fucking discriminated against in this country. Pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? Anyways, so again, the whole point of this article was to kind of discuss, we'll say, a chain of events that kind of coalesced to, give us Donald Trump, I guess you could say. And saying how we just need to have more empathy for his voter base. And there were some really, really interesting, extremely interesting responses to this piece. And Twitter is really not loading. I cannot believe it. Okay. Since the powers that be don't want me to read these tweets from my phone, I'm going to have to open Twitter on my computer because it's really not loading. Look at this. What is this election missing? Empathy for Trump voters. And then Jamel Bowie, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who's a writer that I follow on Twitter, and I know a lot of people follow Jamel. He's like really, really popular. They're really not loading. Wow, okay. He said, what this election is missing is anyone to take the agency of these voters and their affirmative choice for white nationalism seriously. I'm going to read that again. What this election is missing is anyone to take the agency of these voters and their affirmative choice for white nationalism seriously. So from that very first tweet, Jamel Bowie is talking about agency, and he's talking about choices. And he's talking about the choices that these people are personally making outside of, we can say, the economic. We'll just stick to the economics because the article really focused more on economics and how capitalism and the free market and our economy getting fucked has pretty much, eliminated the middle class, and how that's kind of affected these poor white people, out in middle America. He's basically saying that no one is taking their choice that they made for white nationalism seriously. No one is taking their agency and the fact that they said, I'm in this bad situation, instead of maybe looking at my economy and instead of maybe looking at the larger systems that are at work that are actually affecting me as a poor person. I'm going to choose to blame the black people and the Hispanics, and I want to build a wall and kick out all the niggers and shit like that. That is a choice, which is why I said this video was going to be about choices, right? That is a choice. What this election is missing is anyone to take the agency of these voters and their affirmative choice for white nationalism seriously. Basically, they're saying, I fear what might happen to me and my family if an ethno-nationalist movement seizes power, so why can't you have more empathy? So he's basically saying that as a black person, I fear what might happen to me in this country if, if Trump wins. I feel like I don't know what's going to happen, literally, for my life, for my safety, for the safety of my family. And you're telling me that I need to have more empathy for these people, right? And he's like, I'm sorry, I know that I'm shrill on this. It is just astonishing to see the privileging of white anger over the lives and safety of non-whites. Because the whole tone of the article was yeah, white people are angry, and of course they're threatening, blacks and Hispanics and other minorities, but, they have a right to be angry because they removed the middle class, and why can't we just have more empathy and try to see things from their perspective, which is a privilege that is always, 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 always given to white people. From school shooters that they fucking dive into their background to try to see where they went wrong, to fucking domestic terrorists that are, called the lone wolves and all, and mentally ill and all this stuff. That is a privilege that is always, 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 always given to white people. The privileging of their feelings and their anger and their situations and this idea of we have to have empathy for them and we have to figure out a way to make them feel comfortable, even if they're hating us, threatening us, being racist towards us. It's still about the centering of white feelings, no matter what. Choosing to blame the blacks and the Hispanics and all this other shit that fucking Donald Trump says is irrational, and you are making a choice when you do that. Let's read some more tweets. You're not shrill. I grew up in a place with white middle-class people who made choices and just blamed others when they failed, were insecure, or slipping. Choices. We're talking about white people making choices and then blaming other people for the consequences, for the fallout. And then you have major publications like the Washington Post that still say, let's not force them to deal with their own racism and the way that they find it so comfortable to fall back on racism and the hating of others. Let's try to have all this empathy for them, right? More tweets. Whoever wrote that article needs to be slapped. They redlined and their own neighborhood still fell apart. They cheated children of educational funding and their schools are still a mess with higher proportions of school shootings. They get no empathy from me. By voting for him, they affirm all of his ugliness. Again, they are making a choice. The constant call for empathy without taking their choices seriously ends up privileging their racism. Again, you choose to support Donald Trump, especially publicly. You want to go to his rallies. You want to argue about it on social media. Those are all choices that you're making. No one is standing there with a gun to your head talking about get on fucking Twitter and defend Donald Trump and go to these fucking meetings and go to these fucking speeches and lectures and spout this racist fucking rhetoric. Those are choices that you're making. And they need to be able to stand in those choices and own them without these constant calls for empathy and feel for them. And what about their white feelings? And what about their white feelings? And who's going to think of the white people and all of their white feelings? Because, their racism just really isn't their fault. It's just really not their fault. It's just like the economy is so bad. And just like, why can't you feel empathy for them? Like, well, because they hate us. Like, we don't have to fucking feel empathy for them. Again, the constant call for empathy without taking their choices seriously ends up privileging their racism. I often hear calls to recognize that white supremacists are not monsters, that they are just people from the left. Somebody replied to that. That's for the people that don't want people to talk bad about their grandparents. Those are the white hipster liberals. I see y'all, the white moderates that like to act like y'all are so progressive, but then you want to excuse Nana, who fucking comes in and talks about the niggers and spics and making America great again. We're talking about y'all. In the past, whites sympathetic to black causes were called nigger lovers and ostracized or scared back into the fold. Why can't we do the same for whites sympathetic to racist causes? And I love that because, again, there's all this talk about well, where's this empathy for the racist? It's well, we don't know. Let's not have empathy for the racists. Let's fucking reject all the empathy for all the racists and let's fucking ostracize them and let's make them fucking ashamed and let's make them stand in their choices and fucking own them. You want to fucking go around and publicly support Trump and do this and do that? That's fine. Stand in it, own it. I'm not going to have empathy for you. I'm going to call you a fucking racist, fucking white racist, and then don't fucking people crying in my comment section. You calling me racist is racist. I would fucking respect you more if you just stood in that shit and fucking owned it. You're sympathetic to racist causes. I have no empathy for you. I'm ostracizing you out of fucking my space, my fucking little slice of society. You're not welcome. You gotta fucking go. And don't ask me to have empathy or sympathy of any kind for these type of people, because at a certain point, people are making choices. Be it fucking coons that want to pretend that everything is fine and that they don't know what the niggers down in the dirt are talking about when they say Black Lives Matter, despite the fact that they were just on Solange's album. And I know that Solange gave them the breakdown of what the album was about, but now they want to give interviews talking about that they don't know what the fucking ants crawling around in the dirt are talking about. Be it those fucking coons, be it the white people that want to fucking sleep soundly at night by telling themselves that, oh, the niggers and the spics are taking our jobs, and once Donald Trump gets elected, everything's going to go back to the way it was, because they don't want to admit to themselves that we have an impossible to sustain economy that was built on the fucking concept of free labor, aka slave labor. Instead of blaming that, instead of blaming broken and poor school systems, instead of blaming our meritocracy, instead of blaming their own drug addictions, they want to blame the niggers. I don't have to feel empathy for them, because at a certain point, people are making choices. At a certain point, you're making a choice to remain ignorant. And I know that they say ignorance is bliss. So, it must be nice to just, be ignorant. I'm sure it's wonderful. But people don't have to have empathy for you, and they don't have to hold your hand and continuously walk you through these things, especially white people. They are the very last people that need empathy. Like, what white people really need is less empathy, to be honest with you, because they've been raised in a society that has literally done nothing but be empathetic to them and empathize with them since birth, and coddled them into believing that they can have anything and everything they want, which is why they act the way that they act now. They need less empathy. They don't need any more empathy. Like, the rest of us need all the fucking empathy we can get. The people that have actually been systemically discriminated against in this country, systemically, you know, through institutions, through fucking the institution of slavery, through the government, through, you know, the fucking education system, the political systems, you know, those of us that have been and are still being systemically discriminated against, especially because of race, like, to this day, like, we need more empathy. Fucking white people that have just now realized that our economy is fucked and have decided to blame the niggers are ignorant, and they're choosing to remain ignorant. And I don't have to fucking feel empathetic for them and hold their hand through that shit, because the only reason why they even feel that way is, again, because society has told them from day one that the world revolves around them, right? They don't need any more empathy. If you fucking touch a hot-ass stove after your mom tells you that it's hot, the first time you do it, she's gonna feel bad. The second time, she's gonna feel less bad. The third time, she's probably gonna slap the shit out of you, like, stop touching the hot-ass stove. Like, I keep telling you that the stove is hot, you're not learning, right? You're not learning. At a certain point, you no longer deserve empathy because you are choosing ignorance. You're making choices. And just the mere fact that it's even asked of us to be empathetic in the face of ignorance and hate and racism and these choices that people are literally choosing to make is pure white privilege. And it is the continued prioritizing of white feelings over Black lives, especially, right? Like, I don't have to feel empathetic for them, you know? If your best friend is fucking dating a fuck nigga and he just keeps on doing her dirty, and he, like, has a baby by somebody else, and he's, like, always out running the streets, and she's, like, crying every single day, at a certain point, you're gonna be like, listen, I know that, like, the dick is making you crazy or something, but, like, you can't keep talking to me about this nigga because I just don't have it in me to listen to your dumb ass anymore, because you're just not fucking learning that you're fucking with the fuck nigga, and you just need to stop. Like, you're choosing to remain ignorant, and I don't have any more empathy for you. But they will literally, like, continue to ask us to, like, dig deep down in some magical well of fucking reserve empathy that we're supposed to just all have inside of us for white people, and feel all this empathy for them, and I just don't feel it. I just do not feel it. And again, it's so ironic because white people are the main ones that love to talk about personal responsibility for everybody else, but they can't take personal responsibility. It's everyone else's job to do all this emotional labor for them, which I've talked about before, and I'm not doing emotional labor for these people. Like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I refuse. Because again, they're making the choice, and they need to stand in their choice, and they need to own their choice, and there's no empathy for people that choose to be ignorant. You know? Especially people that have had the leg up over the rest of us in every single sense of the word and never have been empathetic towards us when we're actually fighting against institutional and systemic, you know, racism and discrimination. Like, real shit. Like, oh, I'm so sorry that you just now realize the economy sucks, Billy Bob, but, you know, choosing to blame the Black people is not going to get me empathetic towards you, because guess what? The economy sucks for me too, double, because I'm fucking Black. Like, at least you're white. Like, you have your white privilege. Like, you know? So I just wanted to talk a little bit about choices, because again, these are choices that people are making. These people don't deserve empathy. I don't feel empathy for them. I don't feel anything for them. I feel nothing for them. You know? Like, yeah, the economy sucks for everyone, but yet somehow not everyone has turned to supporting for Trump. Isn't that amazing? The school system sucks for everyone. The bipartisan fucking political system sucks for everyone, which is why I haven't done not a single video on this election, and I won't do a video on this election, because I'm political in the sense that I care about political issues like social justice and, you know, the economy and education, but I'm not political in the sense that I, like, believe in, like, a bipartisan political system, because it's, like, bullshit. And especially as someone that grew up in Washington, D.C. and, like, saw lobbying and shit like that firsthand, which is basically a representative of a corporation lobbies, you know, politicians to serve their interests. They kind of like pay them or sometimes like blackmail them and stuff like that to get support. Like, it's a circus. Like, it's a circus. Like, the last debate was like in Vegas. Like, the whole thing is like a circus. So, you know, it's like, shit is bad for everybody. Like, the middle class disappeared for everyone. And you know who was hit even harder than fucking poor white people? Black people. Middle class black people were hit even harder than poor white people. So, like, why are you writing articles about why I need to have more empathy for fucking racist Billy Bob in Appalachia that's like shooting up heroin and getting put in fucking government funded rehab just to like be a Trump supporter and say how much he like hates niggers, when like my middle class black family was like hit even harder by like the recession and like the economy and like the broken school system and the broken political systems and like all this like rigged voter bullshit. Like, all this shit hits fucking minorities and especially black people even harder. But you're gonna like write all these, just because we're black, but you're gonna write all these think pieces about how I need to have all this empathy for white Trump supporters because they have it bad right now, like as if we don't all have it bad right now, like as if the same shit that's affecting them is not affecting the rest of us twofold, tenfold, 20-fold because of our marginalization, because of our intersections. Really? Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Like, stop prioritizing white fucking feelings. White feelings don't matter. Your white feelings do not matter. None of us care. Like, we have more important things to worry about than your fucking shitty ass choices and your hurt feelings that we now need to empathize with, and we need to empathize with you to try to convince you to like not put a fucking racist, fascist demagogue into power. Like, do we not realize like how off the chain all of this is? And this shit was run in the Washington Post. So like, choices, stand in your choices, own your choices. And there will be links in the description box. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.